Kendrick Lamar's silence is breaking the industry, and the House of Drake is panicking like never before. Alright, this is exactly the moment they were praying for. And no, that is not a slip of the tongue, that is not an accident, and that is not some throwaway line you can scroll past. That is the entire thesis of what you are about to hear. Because now, the moment you zoom in on Kendrick Lamar, and I mean really zoom in, past the noise, past the mid-tier podcasts, past the delivery app oracles pretending to hold the temperature of the culture in their palm, what you find is a man who has quite literally turned silence into a weapon of mass promotion. And the industry is not okay. The industry is not fine. The industry is, in fact, in a full-blown panic loop, and Kendrick Lamar has not said a single public word to trigger it. Before we dive an inch deeper, do me one favor. Hit that like button, hype it up in the comments, and drop every last piece of your read in the comment section, because what we are about to unpack is nothing short of the most surgical media manipulation attempt hip-hop has watched play out in the last decade. Every tap of that like button doubles the reach, doubles the pump, and doubles the chance that this exact conversation lands in front of the eyes of the people trying to bury it. So do it, and then let's get to work. Now, the setup. Yesterday, somewhere between the coffee refill and the second scroll of the timeline, DJ Akademiks, the doorman of the drive-thru dynasty, the Grubhub gargoyle, the takeout tribune of hip-hop media, decided he had heard enough whispers to declare that Kendrick Lamar is finalizing what he is calling a diss album. Not an album. Not a project. Not an era. A diss album. And in that single word, that single loaded, weaponized, industry-crafted word, the entire play reveals itself. Because you know what a diss album implies? It implies that Kendrick Lamar, one of the greatest lyricists of his generation, one of the only artists to walk out of the biggest rap battle in modern history, holding a Super Bowl performance, a stadium tour, a Grammy sweep, and the loudest cultural mandate any rapper has held since Prime Jay-Z, is somehow reduced to being the not-like-us guy in a permanent, panicked loop. It implies Kendrick Lamar is scrambling. It implies Kendrick Lamar is reheating. It implies Kendrick Lamar is trapped in the shadow of a fight he already ended. And here is where you have to be sharp, because that framing is not innocent. That framing is not a slip. That framing is a sales pitch aimed at a very specific demographic, and Kendrick Lamar is the target of the campaign whether he knows it or not. Let me back the truck up for a second, because there is a real story here, and the real story is not the diss album. The real story is that Kendrick Lamar has done something no one in this era of rap has been able to do. He has vanished, on purpose, at the peak of his powers, and the industry cannot survive without him. That is the story. That is the entire story. And every headline, every podcast rant, every clickbait thumbnail with Kendrick Lamar's face plastered next to a red arrow question mark, every single one of them is a symptom of that story. Not a story of their own. Now, this is the fiction. Now, this is the sleight of hand. According to the doorman of the drive-thru dynasty, Kendrick Lamar is reworking a project, and it is going to be, quote-unquote, a diss album. He wants some Squabble Up, some Humble, and some Luther. He wants a nice little mix, apparently. Like, Kendrick Lamar is a Spotify playlist you can custom order at 2:47 a.m. between combo meals. That is the level of respect we are watching get handed to one of the most decorated artists of the century. And the wildest part is, the audience Akademiks is feeding the terminally online Drake Defense Brigade, is eating it. Every last morsel. Not because they believe it, but because they need to believe it. Because here is what the runner-up of the culture, the perpetual second seat, and the entire ecosystem propping him up have finally figured out. Kendrick Lamar is the sun that their entire solar system rotates around. And when the sun goes quiet, the planets get cold. So they scream louder. They post more. They coordinate the timeline harder. They stack the algorithm with recycled headlines, misquoted whispers, and manufactured urgency, all in the hope that they can bait Kendrick Lamar out of his silence and back onto their terms. And it is not working. It is genuinely not working. And that is why the panic is turning into hysteria, and the hysteria is turning into something a lot uglier, something I am going to call, right here, right now, on this timeline, in this video, Kendrick Lamar Withdrawal Fever. That is what we are watching. That is the diagnosis. That is the condition. Kendrick Lamar Withdrawal Fever. And once you learn to spot the symptoms, you will not be able to unsee it. Because here is the truth, and I want every person watching this to sit with it for a second, because it is going to be uncomfortable if you have been quietly nodding along with the Takeout Tribune's talking points. Kendrick Lamar, at this exact moment, is the most powerful artist in hip-hop, and he is achieving that status by refusing to participate in the version of hip-hop the industry has spent the last decade engineering. He is not on the podcasts. He is not doing the numbers-chasing features. He is not going tit for tat with subs. He is not tweeting through it. He is not filming reaction videos in a hoodie at 3 a.m. He is not defending himself. He is not explaining himself. He is not marketing himself in the way the algorithm is designed to reward. And yet, somehow, every single day, on every single timeline, Kendrick Lamar is the loudest name in the culture. And that right there is a magic trick nobody in Toronto, nobody in Atlanta, nobody in the media capitals of this industry knows how to counter. So they invent a diss album. Because if they can convince the audience that Kendrick Lamar's next move is another Not Like Us, then they can preemptively frame it as small, petty, and repetitive before a single note leaks. It is a beautiful play. It is also a terrified play. And when I say terrified, I mean the kind of terror you can smell through the screen. Alright, let's zoom out for a second and get honest about the landscape, because the loudest voices in the room have completely lost the plot, and you deserve a version of this conversation that is not being funded by someone's marketing budget. Drake dropped Iceman. It has been sitting at the top of the conversation for a minute now, and I am going to say something the delivery app oracles will never say: Iceman is fine. It is not a disaster. It is not a fumble. It is not a career ender. It is the best version of Drake we have seen in maybe 6 or 7 years, and the reason it is doing the numbers it is doing is because Kendrick Lamar handed him a story arc he did not have to write himself. Take Kendrick Lamar out of the equation and Iceman is a Tuesday afternoon streaming footnote. Insert Kendrick Lamar into the subtext and suddenly it is a cultural event. That is not shade. That is a receipt. And every single stream Drake is celebrating right now is a stream that Kendrick Lamar's silence generated for him, whether Drake's camp wants to admit that or not. And this is where it gets philosophical. Because you have to understand what has happened to Drake's entire brand over the last 24 months. Drake used to be a monolith of pop rap radio dominance, the streaming king, the numbers king, the algorithm's favorite child. And now? Now, Drake is a story. Not an artist first. A story first. And the story is, and always will be from this point forward, Kendrick Lamar. Every album Drake drops from now until the end of his career will be framed, marketed, decoded, and dissected through the Kendrick Lamar lens. His feature choices, his lyrical pivots, his interview quotes, his fashion runs, his tour rollouts, all of it will be filtered through one single question. Is this a response to Kendrick? And that is not a career. That is a haunting. Now, the doorman of the drive-thru dynasty and the entire ecosystem of Takeout Tribune podcasters can scream all they want. They can insist Drake has moved on. They can push the diss album narrative until their voices give out. They can flood the timeline with reaction thumbnails at 6 a.m. Eastern every single morning. But the very fact that they have to is the loudest evidence in the world that Kendrick Lamar owns the psychological real estate of that entire fan base. And that ownership is total. That ownership is deed-signed, notarized, and irrevocable. You want proof? Here is your proof. Iceman is out. It is the biggest project of Drake's late career pivot. And what is every single online conversation about? Kendrick Lamar. Every trending thread. Every viral clip. Every debate, every take, every quote tweet. Kendrick Lamar. Kendrick Lamar. Kendrick Lamar. The album that was supposed to bury him is being metabolized by the culture as another chapter in the Kendrick Lamar cinematic universe. And I do not say that to be mean. I say that because it is factually, structurally, algorithmically what is happening. Alright, Let's talk about the specific game being run, because if you are new around here, you might not have caught the pattern yet, and once you do, you will not be able to unsee it either. Ever since the summer of the pop-out, ever since Kendrick Lamar walked off that stage in Inglewood with the entire West Coast behind him and not like us replaying in every stadium tunnel in the country, there has been a coordinated media operation to reframe him. Not to beat him. Not to out-rap him. To reframe him. Reframing is cheaper than winning. Reframing is what you do when you cannot compete in the arena of the actual craft. Reframing is what a marketing budget buys when the artistic budget has run dry. The reframe goes like this. Kendrick Lamar is a fraud. Kendrick Lamar is manufactured. Kendrick Lamar is safe. Kendrick Lamar is media created. Kendrick Lamar is a puppet. Kendrick Lamar is a one-hit diss track guy. Kendrick Lamar is scared to drop. Kendrick Lamar is in hiding. Kendrick Lamar is finished. Kendrick Lamar cannot follow up GNX. Kendrick Lamar is scrambling. Every one of those talking points is being pushed by the same 3 or 4 voices, in the same 3 or 4 rooms, at the same 3 or 4 times of day. And if you do not think that is coordinated, I have a boxing-themed subscription service NFT to sell you. And here is the part that should really wake you up. All of that reframing energy, every joule of it, is being funneled at a man who is not on social media, who is not doing press, who is not defending himself, who is not clapping back, who is, by every observable metric, minding his own business, working on music, raising his family, running his label, expanding his creative agency, and letting the culture come to him. That is not the behavior of an artist in a panic. That is the behavior of an artist who has completely mastered the game and is refusing to play the version of it the industry needs him to play in order to keep everyone else eating. Kendrick Lamar is the sun. Everyone else is the ecosystem. And the sun does not owe the ecosystem an interview. Now, you know I have to bring it back to the reports, because there are reports. And I am going to be fair to the reports, because at the core of the delivery app Oracle's rant, there is one nugget of truth that is worth pulling out and washing off. Kendrick Lamar is, in fact, cooking. That much is not a lie. Multiple sources, real sources, not just the drive-thru dynasty, have been whispering that PG Lang is deep in an album cycle. Dave Free has been dropping breadcrumbs. The boxing hand wrap at the 2026 Grammys, the one Kendrick Lamar wore across the red carpet, was not styling. That was a signal. Kendrick Lamar does not accidentally wear things. Kendrick Lamar operates in symbols. Kendrick Lamar plants flags. Kendrick Lamar communicates in Easter eggs. And the fact that his entire recent aesthetic run has been laced with boxing imagery, ringside visuals, glove motifs, and stance references tells you exactly what era we are stepping into, and it is not a diss album era. It is a reign era. It is a champion era. It is a the belt is not up for grabs anymore, and here is the anthem to prove it era. The distinction matters. Because a diss album is reactive. A championship album is definitive. And Kendrick Lamar has never been reactive a day in his career. Reactive artists chase the moment. Definitive artists build the moment. Kendrick Lamar builds moments. Kendrick Lamar has been building this moment for 2 years. And when the moment lands, it is going to arrive from an angle nobody bothered to guard. That is what the doorman of the drive-thru dynasty cannot compute. That is what the takeout tribunes cannot process. Because their entire worldview is based on the idea that hip-hop is a numbers race, a stream war, a spreadsheet contest. And Kendrick Lamar does not operate in the spreadsheet. Kendrick Lamar operates in the mythology. And you cannot beat mythology with a marketing budget. You cannot out-podcast a symbol. You cannot smear a legacy that has already been written into the cultural code. Alright, pause. Take a breath. Because now we have to talk about the collateral damage, and there is a lot of it. Because the game being run against Kendrick Lamar is not just being run against Kendrick Lamar. It is being run against the entire notion of authenticity in hip-hop. And there is a body count. Look at Joe Budden. I say this with love, because I have respect for what Joe has built, but you cannot watch his content this year and pretend nothing has changed. Joe Budden used to be the sharpest scalpel in the podcast game. Rap review Joe. Take me to the lyrics Joe. That version of Joe would have carved up the diss album talking point in about 90 seconds and left it bleeding on the studio floor. The current version of Joe is out here doing 11-minute monologues about Victor Wembanyama visiting children. And I love Wemby. Wemby is a national treasure. But when the sharpest rap analyst of the podcast era is dodging the biggest rap story of the year to talk about a French basketball player's charity itinerary, you know somebody, somewhere, has offered somebody, somewhere, a very warm handshake to look the other way. That is what this smear machine does. It compromises. It corrupts. It rewards the loudest cosigners and starves the honest critics until the honest critics get tired and go find another lane. And Kendrick Lamar is watching it all from a distance, taking notes, and I promise you this, filing every last one of them away for the album. Because that is what Kendrick Lamar does. Kendrick Lamar collects. Kendrick Lamar catalogs. Kendrick Lamar returns the receipts. And when the album lands, half of the people currently on the Takeout Tribune payroll are going to find themselves quietly mentioned in a bar that will end their credibility in real time. Meanwhile, the runner-up of the culture is out here doing 43-track projects. 43 tracks. Let that sit for a second. 43. That is not an album. That is a hostage negotiation with the algorithm. That is a number strategy dressed in a hoodie. And I said earlier that Iceman is fine, and I stand by that, but you cannot look at a 43-track release and pretend the person behind it is not sweating. Kendrick Lamar released GNX with 12 tracks, no rollout, no warning, no press cycle, no interviews, and it dominated the culture for 18 months and counting. Drake released a 43-track opus with a full press army, a media coordination team, a podcast lobby, and every industry favor cashed in, and the conversation is still, say it with me, Kendrick Lamar. That is not a competition. That is a coronation. And let me stack another layer on top of that, because the numbers game is a trap the industry keeps setting for anyone who tries to argue against Kendrick Lamar. The industry wants you locked into a spreadsheet. The industry wants you counting units, counting streams, counting first-week bumps, counting playlist ads. Because in the spreadsheet, Drake will always look like he is winning. In the spreadsheet, the runner-up of the culture will always have the shinier metric. The spreadsheet is the enemy of nuance. The spreadsheet is the enemy of legacy. The spreadsheet is the enemy of anyone trying to actually understand what Kendrick Lamar is building. And that is why the Takeout Tribune keeps pointing you back to the spreadsheet, because if you look up from it, even for 1 second, you will notice that Kendrick Lamar has been building a cathedral while Drake has been building a strip mall next to a freeway exit. Both structures exist. Both structures hold traffic. Only one of them is going to be standing in 50 years, and I do not think I have to tell you which one. And that is exactly why the doorman of the drive-thru dynasty is so aggressive about the diss album narrative right now. Because the diss album narrative is the last spreadsheet-friendly frame the industry has left. If they can shrink Kendrick Lamar down to a diss album guy, they can compare him to Drake in a metric Drake can win. They can put Not Like Us next to Family Matters, put Squabble Up next to Push-Ups, put Euphoria next to Tailor Made, and pretend the whole battle was a coin flip contest of tit-for-tat one-liners. That is the play. That is the entire play. Reduce Kendrick Lamar's catalog to 5 weeks in the summer of 2024 and pretend the previous 15 years of catalog building never happened. It is the most transparent frame in modern hip-hop media, and the fact that so many people are falling for it is genuinely embarrassing for the state of rap journalism in 2026. Now, the counter-argument. And I always try to steelman the counter-argument because I am not here to preach to one side. Some of you are going to say, but Drake is winning commercially. Look at the streams. Look at the numbers. Look at the charts. And you are right. Commercially, Drake is doing Drake numbers. He was always going to do Drake numbers because his machine is one of the most well-oiled marketing engines in the history of recorded music. Nobody disputes that. But there is a difference between commercial performance and cultural gravity. Drake has the commercial performance. Kendrick Lamar has the cultural gravity. And in the long run of hip-hop history, and I mean the real long run, the run that gets written into the textbooks, the run that ends up on the plaques in the culture's hall of fame, cultural gravity always wins. Always. Ask Nas. Ask Outkast. Ask every artist whose numbers were dwarfed in their era, but whose legacy became the North Star. That is the tier Kendrick Lamar is playing on. And no 43-track Manuever is going to move the needle on that. And for the folks in the back who still are not convinced, let me hand you the receipt. The most streamed track of the entire beef, the anthem that will be echoing at cookouts, wedding dance floors, and parade routes 20 summers from now, was Kendrick Lamar's Not Like Us. That is not opinion. That is a Billboard-verified, RIA-plaqued, Grammy-consecrated fact. And every attempt Drake has made to legally suppress it, to remove it from streaming, to sue the platform hosting it, has only cemented its cultural half-life. You cannot sue a symbol out of the culture. You cannot subpoena a Kendrick Lamar chorus out of the collective memory of hip-hop. You can only accelerate the mythology by trying, and every court filing Drake's team has submitted has effectively been a co-signed promotional flyer for the Kendrick Lamar era. The runner-up of the culture is paying his own lawyers to keep the Kendrick Lamar legend alive. Read that sentence twice. It should hit differently on the second pass. And this is the deeper metric the takeout tribunes cannot compute. Because a stream number is a snapshot. A cultural anthem is a monument. Streams evaporate. Anthems petrify. Anthems get carved into the granite of the genre. And Kendrick Lamar has stacked more anthems in the last 24 months than Drake has stacked in the last 5 years combined. That is not spite. That is arithmetic. Alright, let's get to the mid-video question, because I know some of you are still on the fence. You are still thinking, but what if Akademiks is right? What if it really is a diss album? And that is a fair thought. It is a lazy thought, but it is a fair thought. So let me handle it. Here is why the diss album framing does not survive contact with reality. Kendrick Lamar has already won that war. He does not need to relitigate it. There is no benefit, commercial, artistic, cultural, or personal, to releasing another Not Like Us adjacent project. Kendrick Lamar is not in the business of running back victory laps. Kendrick Lamar is in the business of setting new frontiers. The next Kendrick Lamar project is going to be about something the culture has not even started debating yet. It is going to introduce a vocabulary the culture does not currently have. It is going to reframe a conversation nobody realized needed reframing. That is the Kendrick Lamar template. That is the Kendrick Lamar signature. That is how Good Kid landed. That is how TPB landed. That is how Damn landed. That is how Mr. Morale landed. That is how GNX landed. Kendrick Lamar shows up, drops a bomb, redefines the terrain, and disappears. And the next drop will do the same, and the diss album prediction is going to look, in hindsight, exactly as embarrassing as every other prediction Akademiks has ever made about a Kendrick Lamar release. So no, it is not a diss album. It is a boxing album. It is a championship album. It is a coronation album. It is a legacy lock album. It is the album Kendrick Lamar has been sketching in the margins for the entire silent stretch. And it is going to land, and the culture is going to convulse, and the doorman of the drive-thru dynasty is going to spend the following 72 hours trying to explain, live on stream, why he called it wrong again. Now, the deeper point. The point I need every single person watching to internalize before we get to the outro. The point that makes all of this make sense. Kendrick Lamar has done something no other artist of his generation has managed to do. He has decoupled his power from his participation. Read that again. He has decoupled his power from his participation. Every other artist in this game is trapped in the participation economy. They have to post. They have to feature. They have to tour. They have to appear. They have to respond. They have to feed the beast, or the beast forgets them. Kendrick Lamar has broken the beast. Kendrick Lamar has proven that in the 2026 attention economy, the most valuable currency is not visibility, it is scarcity. And Kendrick Lamar is the scarcity king. Kendrick Lamar is the scarcity master. Kendrick Lamar is the scarcity architect. And every day he does not post, every day he does not comment, every day he does not respond, that scarcity compounds. Every day. So when the Takeout Tribune tells you Kendrick Lamar is hiding, what he is actually telling you, without knowing it, is that Kendrick Lamar has mastered a mode of stardom the industry does not have the tools to counter. Because you cannot smear a silence. You cannot cancel a symbol. You cannot out an absence. The absence is the message. The absence is the strategy. The absence is the marketing. And every panicked headline generated by that absence is a free promotional dollar deposited into the Kendrick Lamar account. That is not luck. That is not accident. That is not stumbled into brilliance. That is a 15-year plan being executed at chess grandmaster level while everyone else is still playing checkers on a folding table outside the barbershop. And I want to name the ecosystem accurately because vague framing lets the guilty parties hide. There is DJ Akademiks, of course, the doorman of the drive-thru dynasty. There is a whole constellation of Twitch-adjacent, Kick-adjacent, YouTube-adjacent commentators who all share one job description: keep the Kendrick Lamar conversation hostile, keep the Drake conversation flattering, and keep the algorithm fed with just enough manufactured outrage to sustain a daily upload schedule. There is the pay-for-play blog network that will publish any leaked snippet, any speculative rumor, any half-baked prediction, as long as the referral traffic hits. There is the podcast lobby that has quietly agreed, without ever needing to hold a meeting about it, to soft-pedal Kendrick Lamar's accomplishments in exchange for continued access to certain other artists. And there are the ghost accounts, the botnets, the reply guy armies that show up in the comments of every single Kendrick Lamar post to seed the same 3 or 4 canned talking points. That is the machine. That is the apparatus. That is what a millions and millions of dollars smear campaign actually looks like when you break it down to its component parts. And every single one of those component parts is running on borrowed time, because the moment Kendrick Lamar drops, the entire apparatus is going to face a reckoning that no PR team is prepared for. And here is the poetic justice of it all. Every video, every podcast, every reply guy tweet, every clickbait blog post, every single one of them is training the algorithm to associate the phrase Kendrick Lamar with maximum attention. They think they are burying him. They are actually pumping him. Every takedown attempt is a keyword deposit into the Kendrick Lamar SEO account. Every hate view is a watch time contribution to the Kendrick Lamar algorithmic profile. Every angry stitch is a session extension bump for the Kendrick Lamar cinematic universe. The machine designed to sink him is, by every measurable YouTube metric, the wind under his wings. And nobody in the takeout tribune brigade has the self-awareness to notice. Alright, let me hit you with the philosophical peak of this video, because we have earned it, and I do not want to bury it. Here it is. Kendrick Lamar's silence is not the absence of Kendrick Lamar. Kendrick Lamar's silence is the loudest form of Kendrick Lamar. It is Kendrick Lamar concentrated. It is Kendrick Lamar distilled. It is Kendrick Lamar in his purest, most undiluted, most mythologically potent form. Because in a world where every artist is competing for the loudest microphone, the one artist who refuses to speak becomes the one artist everyone has to listen for. And that inversion, that flip, is the intrinsic genius of the entire Kendrick Lamar operation. That is the reveal. That is the answer. That is the entire play. And if you want the historical parallel, because I know some of you love the historical parallels, go back and look at the mid-90s Nas run. Go back and look at the Illmatic aftermath. Go back and look at the era where Nas said less, appeared less, granted fewer interviews, and let the mythology do the marketing. That is the archetype Kendrick Lamar is drawing from, and he is doing it with a modern media stack Nas never had access to. Kendrick Lamar has combined Nas-era mystique with 2026-era distribution power. That combination has never existed before. Not in this genre. Not in this century. Kendrick Lamar is the first artist to prove that you can have both the reclusive genius mystique and the stadium tour scale at the exact same time. And once other artists watch him pull this off, the industry playbook is going to be rewritten from scratch. Every A-tier artist in the next 5 years is going to try to imitate this move, and none of them are going to be able to pull it off, because you cannot fake 15 years of catalog-earned credibility. You either have it, or you do not. Kendrick Lamar has it. Everybody else is renting. Now, comment time. Because I said we were going to do this, and I meant it. Drop every last piece of your read in the comments. Do you think Kendrick Lamar's next project is going to be a boxing-themed championship album, or do you actually believe the doorman of the drive-thru dynasty when he says it is a diss album? Do you think Drake's Iceman is genuinely competing with Kendrick Lamar's cultural gravity, Or is it just riding the slipstream of the Kendrick Lamar mythology? Do you think Joe Budden has been compromised, or is that unfair? Do you think the boxing hand wrap at the 2026 Grammys was a coincidence, a stylist's flourish, or a signal flare? Tell me every single one of your reads. I read every single comment on this channel, and the sharpest takes will be pinned to the top, so bring your A game. And here is what you also need to know before you scroll. Kendrick Lamar Withdrawal Fever is not just a joke. It is a real diagnostic tool. If you find yourself scrolling past every honest analysis of a Kendrick Lamar release to consume 43-track defenses of a runner-up of the Culture Project, you might have Kendrick Lamar Withdrawal Fever. If you find yourself insisting that a boxing hand wrap is meaningless while simultaneously debating the numerology of an Iceman track list, you might have Kendrick Lamar Withdrawal Fever. If you find yourself listening to a delivery app Oracle explain what Kendrick Lamar is thinking without ever having spoken to Kendrick Lamar in a decade, you definitely have Kendrick Lamar Withdrawal Fever. And the only known cure, is to unplug from the Takeout Tribune, log off the perpetual second seat brigade, put on GNX, and remember why you fell in love with hip-hop in the first place. Because that is what all of this is really about. It is about hip-hop. It is about the culture. It is about the soil the genre grew out of. It is about the storytellers who shaped it, the neighborhoods that birthed it, the ancestors whose voices still echo through every 8-bar verse worth spinning. And Kendrick Lamar, whether you love him or you have talked yourself into hating him, is one of the 2 or 3 living artists still tending that soil. Still watering it. Still fertilizing it. Still planting flags for the generation that has not even started rhyming yet. That matters. That should matter to every single person who claims to love this thing we call rap. Alright, landing this plane. Here is the takeaway. The diss album framing is bait. The Takeout Tribune monologue is theater. The 43-track sprint is anxiety. The Kendrick Lamar silence is strategy. The boxing hand wrap is a signal. The next Kendrick Lamar album is not going to be what any of them predict, and the culture is going to lose its mind when it lands. Bookmark this video. Screenshot the timestamp. Come back when it drops. Because when it drops, the mask will slip, and every single person currently invested in the smear will have to reckon with a truth their marketing budget cannot rewrite. The mask will slip. Say it with me. The mask will slip. And let me sharpen that callback for you, because callbacks matter, and this one is going to matter more than most. When I say the mask will slip, I do not mean it as a slogan. I mean it as a forecast. A verified, time-stamped forecast that you can hold me accountable to. When the next Kendrick Lamar album drops, and it is dropping, that is not a maybe, that is a when. The entire infrastructure of denial that the industry has built around him is going to come down in a single news cycle. Every Takeout Tribune who spent the last 12 months building a personal brand on Kendrick Lamar's finished takes is going to have to pivot in real time, and the pivot is going to be visible, and it is going to be humiliating. And it is going to be permanent. The internet does not forget. The receipts are archived. The video files are timestamped. And every single one of those files is going to resurface the moment the culture consecrates the next Kendrick Lamar drop. So when I say the mask will slip, what I actually mean is that the smear campaign has a ticking clock built into it that its architects refuse to acknowledge. Every day they push the diss album framing, they are shortening the fuse on their own credibility. Every hour they double down on the Kendrick Lamar is scared narrative. They are compounding the interest on the reckoning they will eventually owe. That is the mask. That is the slip. That is the moment. And for the Kendrick Lamar loyalists watching the day ones, the Section 80 diehards, the Good Kid Mad City defenders, the To Pimp a Butterfly scholars, the Damn Dissection Club, the Mr. Morale Therapy Circle, the GNX Pop-Out survivors you already know. You have been watching this movie your entire adult life. Kendrick Lamar goes silent. The industry panics. The smear machine spins up. The rumor mill grinds. The Takeout Tribunes prophesy his downfall. And then the album drops, and the culture pivots on a dime, and every hater has to eat the exact same cold plate meal all over again. This is Kendrick Lamar's 5th run of that cycle. 5th. And it never misses. Not once. Not a single time in a 15-year run. And the industry still has not learned the lesson. That is your homework. That is your assignment. That is the meta loop this entire timeline is going to be running on for the rest of the year, so lock it in now. And before you click away, I know you're about to, and I love you for making it this far, so give me 30 more seconds. You need to see the last video I dropped, because it connects directly to this one. In it, I broke down the entire Nike, Kevin Durant, Drake, LeBron situation and how the runner-up of the culture is now dragging his co-signers into a mess they did not sign up for. That video is next up in the queue, and it is the perfect prequel to what you just watched. Tap it. Watch it. And I will see you in the next one. Hit the like. Subscribe if you are new. Hype it up if this hit right. And drop that Kendrick Lamar Withdrawal Fever diagnosis on somebody in the comments who needs the intervention. Tag the friend who has been arguing with you about Kendrick Lamar since the summer of the pop-out. Tag the group chat that has been quietly rotating between denial and rage since GNX dropped. Tag the podcast host who owes the culture an apology. And then come back to this video in 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, whenever the next Kendrick Lamar album drops, and drop one word in the comments. Called it. That is the receipt. That is the loop. That is how we close the meta loop on this timeline. It is your boy signing off from the front lines of the culture. The sun does not owe the ecosystem an interview. The champion does not owe the challengers a rematch. The mythology does not owe the marketing budget a headline. Never forget that. Never forget any of it. Peace.